For today's show, we have one of the coolest stories I think we've had on here in a long time. In that, John Roberts, my guest today, was recommended by one of his coworkers, somebody that he works with every single day. Javier, shout out Javier for bringing this to the table. But got an email out of the blue from Javier, and what he said was, "I work with somebody that I really, really respect, that's doing a phenomenal job, treats people exceptionally well." And it was just such a well thought out email, and so kind. And then as I got on and started to get to know John a little bit, I started to see why Javier went out of his way to write that email. And John, I'm just so happy to have you on the show. It's been so nice getting to know you. Welcome to Beyond the Wrench.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
What did you think at first when you saw Javier reach out on your behalf?
Well, I'm definitely humbled and honored. I think that's something I've repeated over and over when this subject has come up. But I'm definitely humbled and honored that I'd even be nominated. He had told me about it. I said, you don't have to. I don't need to. I don't have to. But I said, you can do what you want. And he kept pushing, and he did it. So, and it just kind of
So
went from
cool.
there.
So cool. So cool. Thank you, Javier, for doing that. That is so cool of you to do. And hopefully someday we get Javier on too. We're going to put him on the spot at some point and get him on the air. But I want to talk. Let's start like we do with every podcast and learn about you. First off, what do you do and who do you do it for?
Well, I'm the shop foreman for Metro Toyota in Kalamazoo, Michigan. So along with that, I do kind of play a technician role and a trainer and mentor role as well, back in our main shop.
Yeah, so you're wearing a lot of hats within the dealership, and uh, as we go through this, I think we're going to spend a lot of time talking about communication and people, and obviously people in this industry. That aspect of any industry, any business, gets complicated, and I love your approach to this, and I'm really, really happy to be able to talk about that with you. But I do want to go back to the origins of this. What got you into the industry in the first place?
Well, wow, we're going way back. It's tough to put your finger on it. I remember in high school we had an auto tech program. I think it was called Consumer Auto Tech. So here I'm, ripe old age of 15, and I got into that, and it's a very basic, generic class. So I did that. Wanted to work on cars more later on in high school, but it was full. The program was full, so I couldn't get in. So it wasn't until college that I got into Kalamazoo Valley Community College. So I am a graduate of theirs in the automotive, as an automotive technician, or what was it? Associates of Applied Science and Automotive Technology. So I started going there, and it kind of just went from there. Obviously I tried to work on my own car, when I had problems with it at that time in life. And it just kind of went from there. And I didn't fully decide probably until I was in my mid 20s, because it went for a couple of years, even though I'd gone through college and I graduated. I was worked at a couple of different places, and I didn't fully decide that, hey, this is what I wanted to do till I was about probably 24 years old, 25 years old. And it just kind of went from there. So that's kind of how it started.
It speaks to the importance of a high school program and just getting that interest sparked in the first place, right? Because I don't know if you had family that was involved in the industry prior or anything like that, but we have so many of our guests on that's where it started at. Like that, maybe they didn't even have a background in automotive or diesel or whatever it is that they're in, but it was a program that piqued their interest, and that initial stoking of the fire, I think, is so important.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely.
Yeah. Did you have family in it?
No, actually, my dad's side of the family, they're all in construction, home building and things like that. So I did not go that direction, obviously.
What did they think of that?
Well, it wasn't out of the norm because honestly, so I have 25 other cousins, and
Wow.
none of us went into the building business. None of us. So
Wow.
it wasn't, I guess it wasn't a big surprise to them. So, and honestly, I'm glad I chose this path, because I mean, the building business, they've had some troubles in the last, if you look at around 2000, what, 7 and 8.
Yeah,
Oh, that would
it
have
was
been,
hard.
navigating those waters and the competition, and man, I am kind of glad I didn't choose that field.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I enjoy what I do. I have fun at what I do, so that's, so I love the
makes life
automotive
easier.
field. Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, when you have a
yeah,
passion and enthusiasm for what you do, that helps. It becomes less work,
yeah,
so it's a lot of fun.
yeah. And it is truly working on your craft and getting a little better each
All
day.
right.
And I'm interested to learn, like, what was your first job? Like, what was it when you kind of made that decision? Like, this is the industry for me. What was the first job you had?
Well, it was more of, I was a tech at a Nissan dealer at the time. And it was more of, I wasn't sure if I was going to continue on in it. So it was somewhere between being a Nissan tech and being essentially a GM tech. Somewhere in there, I decided, like, okay, this is what I want to do. I'm going to continue on with this, but up until that point, like, it was a job for the time being. It's what I went to school for, but I hadn't decided, like, hey, this is going to be it, you know?
What
So,
was the deciding factor? What changed your mind there? Or what, I shouldn't even say change your mind. Like, what kind of flipped the switch to say, okay, this is real. I love this.
man, that's a great question. That's also tough to nail down. I think I had, at the beginning, it is a struggle. Even though you've had schooling, like slipping into either if it's a dealer world or aftermarket world, but just navigating working on cars in the beginning can be very challenging and overwhelming, and you start to question yourself if you're not doing, what the other veterans around you are doing. That was another factor I got to throw in there. Wherever I was in the beginning, there were veterans that have been doing this for 20, 25, 30, 35 years. So that was my perception, was like, man, I don't know what I'm doing. Look at these guys. Well, how do you think they got there? But as a kid, that doesn't click. That doesn't click because you expect to be where they're at right now.
Mhm.
So I think once I started to see, like, yes, I liked what I do, but at the same time, once I started to see, like, I was starting to do stuff that they were doing. My skills were getting better. I was able to diagnose things better. I wasn't at their level, of course not, but I was getting better at it, and I was able to do it. That helped me, like, okay, maybe this is not going to be so bad. Yeah, it's challenging, but I'm going to stick with it. Like, I'm having fun. This is what I want to do. So that's kind of a roundabout way of how I decided, like, hey, this is where I'm going.
Talk about the importance of the experienced techs around you. I think that, I don't even think that. I know that that has so much influence on whether a young technician is going to make it or not, right? Because if they come in and they're just surrounded by people that maybe speak poorly about the industry or just negative each and every day that they come in, and you're right. Like, I went through that as a young tech where when you're battling that confidence issue and you go talk to somebody and that experienced tech says, you know what, it's just going to take getting your butt kicked for a while, and you're like, oh, this is a grind. And it feels like, when you take a step back and you look at maybe the broader picture and you see that, when you're 21 years old, 1 year seems like an eternity, but then as you get older in your career, it just flies by. But I think a lot of it comes down to, like you said, having the right influences around you, having that encouragement to keep going. And if you don't have that, it can be a really, really hard industry early on in your career.
Oh, absolutely. In kind of to your point, having those veterans around you, eh, they kind of, one of the things that they helped me with, was basically the process. Like, hey, this is, excuse me, this is tough. There, you're gonna get, like you said, you're gonna get your butt kicked. You need to face some challenges, and you're gonna fail, and you're gonna mess up. And it took us years to become who we were. It's going to be the same for you. And that message didn't sink in right away, but just knowing that and having them share that with me, I think makes a huge difference, because then, as you mess up and, you have the challenges and things like that, I think that helps you, kind of carry on, like, keep going. Like, hey, this is just a part of it. It's nothing new. You're not surprised or anything, you know? Whereas
Yeah.
someone who doesn't understand that that's going to be a part of the process, they might think like, oh, I'm a failure. I can't do this because I'm having challenges. It's like, no, man, this is just the way it is. And and that's one thing I try to share with with a lot of our trainees and the younger mid-level and even upper level techs coming up is like, man, this is part of the process, dude. This is a journey, is not a destination. And then you're going to continually be working at this, essentially for the rest of your career. And the spin I like to throw on it is like, just like you need to be working on yourself as a person for the rest of your life. This is the thing, is you're going to be doing this until you're dead. Not trying to make it morbid or anything, but it's like
Yeah.
your profession, just like yourself, you're going to be working on this. There is no plateau. Think about the
Yeah.
technology that's coming off the assembly line consistently year after year. It is always going up. You can't, if you do not grow to some extent, you're going to be left behind. So growth has to be, a continuous intentional part of your daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, journey as a technician.
And that's what I see from the best techs, right? The ones that do view it as their craft, that are always trying to find the next training or the next tool or whatever they can. They just have a thirst for that growth. And to me, it's one of the coolest things you can see is a tech that is truly good at their craft, really, really attacking it. The other thing that I think is really cool, and I'm interested to see if you've kind of seen this similar thing happen, but in managing techs for a number of years, I had quite a few of them that, when they first started off, didn't know what they were doing at all, right? Like they were nervous, they just didn't have any confidence. And the ones that kind of kept chipping away at it, it almost felt like there was almost like a light switch moment where all of a sudden they became like they made this huge jump.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what it was. And I don't know if it was more just what my viewpoint of what I was seeing with young techs, but I do think, in my case, I was very patient with young techs, mostly because I had learned from myself that, you need some patience with those early stage technicians. But that's another really cool thing to see is you see that one young tech who might not be as skilled or even talented mechanically as somebody else, but they keep working at it and they keep studying, they keep trying to get better, and they keep kind of bringing that positive attitude. And for those that do that, I've seen some crazy transformations from somebody barely knowing what a wrench is to becoming an advanced level technician. Not sure if you've seen that or not, but that's been in my case some of the coolest moments I've ever seen.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and that's honestly, that's part of the reason why I do what I do, is those are fun moments to be a part of. Watch something click with them. Something technical, something important. You know what I'm saying? That's a lot of fun to watch. And have your hands in that to help someone kind of clear those gaps as far as those skills gaps.
Yeah.
So that's fun to be a part of and watch. Yeah.
Well, and from somebody in your shoes that's been around a shop for a long time now, doesn't that make you want to help that person out more and more too? Like when you see them, when you see the growth and you see that they're working hard at it?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you kind of got to look at it as an investment, only I guess compared to a stock.
Yeah.
If you're constantly dumping money in the stock and nothing is coming back from it, are you going to continually invest in that, or you may back off a little bit, invest very little? Or if you see it progressing, if you see it progressing, like I'm going to continually put more and more money in there because it's producing, so yeah, that's wonderful to keep that process going. Like, hey, this kid is really taken to it. He's learning this. Well, let's start giving him more subjects or invest in him more and more, and just see where it goes. you know
Yeah. I had not heard that analogy before as it relates to developing text, but that is wonderful. Like that is spot on. And for those of you experienced techs that are out there listening, that's great advice for you too. And I know I've heard both ends of the spectrum. I've heard some techs say, well, what do I care about another tech? Right. To me, if you want to make your life, even as that experienced tech, you want to make it more enjoyable. You want to love coming to work, or at least really enjoy coming to work. It helps if you like the people you're working with. And if
Oh yeah.
you're off-putting as an experienced tech and you're, kind of that grumpy person that doesn't want to deal with younger people, which we know we've got plenty of them in our industry. I challenge you, if you're finding yourself in that mindset, to think about it differently and think about it in terms of, if I help this person out, there's probably a better chance we're going to get along. It's going to make my life easier. And rather than trying to pit people against each other, you're working together. And I'm sure you've seen it before too, but I've walked into shops where they don't have that, and everybody's kind of, the gossip trains going
Hmm.
full steam ahead, and that's not a fun environment to be in. But if you walk into a shop where you see kind of almost like the alpha of the shop, or some of the leaders of the shop that are encouraging others, and they are kind of setting the tone for how the shop is going to run, those shops in my eyes just run so much better. It's so much easier to manage, it's so much easier for people to get along. In a lot of cases, that tone is set by that really really experienced tech that's sitting in the shop right now.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Technicians, have you checked out WrenchWay yet? It's a free online community for automotive and diesel professionals just like you. Whether you're job hunting or just looking to connect with other industry professionals, WrenchWay makes it easy to explore opportunities, stay updated on industry news, and help promote the technician profession. With WrenchWay, you can see detailed job info you care about before you apply or interview, stay in the loop with what's happening in the auto and diesel community, explore technician compensation in your area and across the U.S., track your certifications, and much more. Join the WrenchWay community for free at wrenchway.com or download the WrenchWay mobile app. Links are in the show notes. So talk to me a little bit about, you're a shop foreman now.
Hmm.
How do you make that leap, right? Because I think sometimes that leap is very understated in terms of the new responsibilities that come on your plate, and just in general. I kind of look back to the shops that I was in, and if somebody got promoted, you'd maybe get called Hollywood, or you'd get something would happen where you're like, like, I how was it making that leap?
Well, it was man, it was kind of a small migration over time.
Yeah.
So years ago, well, I'd say years ago, what do we got? Probably 6, 7 years ago. I was basically a tech who had, I was mentoring other technicians that came up. And so we had a different service director, which is our current service director right now. Keith had he'd stepped into the position, and he was looking to, to have more managerial staff, I guess, back in the shop, because we did have a shop foreman at the time. So he had basically said, hey, would you do the title was like quality and training foreman. So I was basically a glorified tech, just put it that way, because I was still a technician in the bay. I was still a trainer, but I was taking on a little bit more of a managerial spot. So, and as time went on, years, and this would be a little bit after COVID, a couple of years ago, I moved more into kind of a full-time trainer position, where, because I was teaching class in the morning at the dealership, as well as a tech in the bay and training. So it kind of migrated more into a training kind of position. Well, it also entailed some managerial things that were more shop foreman like, you know, um, quality inspection type things, so on and so forth. So I kind of participated in some of the shop foreman duties. And at the time, the shop foreman was it was kind of an office type shop foreman, whether, he would dispatch work and handle all the vendors and things like that, and monitor repair orders and things like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So as time went on, that individual had moved on to a service manager position at another one of our sister stores, and we needed to kind of fill that gap. And so I kind of just moved into that. So I continued to, I was more or less of a technician, but I would still be doing technician work. You know, if there's a goofy diag in the shop that someone needs some help with, I'm with them. You know, if I have to help out with a customer situation in the lane, I can do that. Or if none of that's going on, I'm a tech in a bay and working on cars. So, and then, but the mentorship and the training is always going on constantly, you know, because we're constantly in the process of training and developing someone at some phase, you know, in the classroom stuff that, you know, that essentially that just keeps going and going. So that's kind of how I migrated into that spot and some of what it looks like today.
I have to imagine that's kind of the most natural way to do it, isn't it? Because it's not just this huge announcement within the dealership. It's kind of, you know, over time you've earned it, and probably kind of a natural sense that a lot of people get that, okay, John has been working his way into this role. And as you see kind of the mentorship piece grow, you know, when you first started doing it, I don't know that mentorship played as key of a role as it does today. And that's not the right way to say it. It's more, maybe it didn't have enough awareness or a proper title to it at times. You know, I think there's always been mentorship in good shops, but to have that quality on top of the technical ability to teach is I'm telling you, there's a lot of skill involved, and those are kind of separate types of knowledge, separate types of jobs as a whole, right? You just say trainer and mentor, uh, but the mentorship and bringing the leadership and being able to make sure that you're developing this next generation of technician obviously goes hand in hand with training. But there are some differences there too, aren't there?
A little bit. I mean, they do blend together quite a bit,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, John, let me ask you this. I'm going to reframe that because I don't think I quite said it right. But when you talk through mentorship, what do you see that's effective for mentoring young techs? And the reason I ask this, kind of in a broad sense, in a kind of a vague sense, is that we hear that mentorship kind of title or that mentorship name just kind of get thrown out there a lot. I'm curious from your eyes what that means. Like what does mentorship truly mean?
Oh wow. Got to think about that for a second. So I guess for the cliff note short answer, you know, to train is like to teach someone how to do something. You know, let's just pick a brake job. Let's pick something easy. You know, show them how to resurface a machine rotor. Show them how to clean up caliper brackets and, you know, replace calipers. You know, we can show them how to do a task. You know what I'm saying? Mentorship, I guess it kind of goes along with the training how to do something, but I think it's also about navigating the waters of the industry and of the shop that you're working at. You know, the shop flow, the way work is dispatched, the, you know, kind of navigating the challenges. You know, and part of the mentorship is almost like coaching. Like when they reach that challenge, you know, where they don't know what to do, they don't know how to go, you know, where to go from here. They're questioning or doubting themselves, or that's where the mentorship slash coaching is. It, you know, and the encouragement that goes along with it, or the challenge, like, hey man, you got to face this difficult time. You know, there is no book for that. There is no guide for that per se. And sometimes you have to be that for someone coming up because they don't know how to be that for themselves. It's like you have to teach them how to navigate that water because that's something that's not taught, you know. So when you face a challenge, you know, back to what we were saying earlier, they have to know that it's a challenge, it's a part of it, and how to take that on. You're gonna have to grin out and bear it, and you're gonna have to face this, and it's gonna suck, but you're gonna have to figure this problem out. I'll show you some techniques, you know. So that's I think where the mentorship comes into play, where it's kind of differentiated from training. Does that make sense?
It makes your answer to that was far better than my question. So you did a heck of a job answering a terrible question. That was great. I do appreciate your answer there though too, and I think there's so much that's undefined with mentorship, but what you said there was spot on. And sometimes it's being the cheerleader, sometimes it's being the kick in the butt, sometimes
So
it's really having somebody to ask a question to, being a young technician can be a very lonely spot, especially when you're you're in your bay for yourself for the first time, right? And there is a lot of uncertainty, and maybe you asked a question like 3 months ago, but you forgot the answer to it, and you need somebody to ask, and you don't want to feel like an idiot going to ask again. I just think
Right.
there's so many keys and so many things that a mentor can help out with that go undefined, but ultimately make the shop run smoother. And for me, that position is invaluable. You can't put a value on how important that is, because without it, we've seen shops that run without that. And again, culture maybe not the greatest, maybe development of techs or some of their retention issues stem from that, because they
Hmm.
don't have that person kind of leading a mentorship program or just truly being a mentor. I think there are a lot of shops out there that there's techs where they don't even have that mentor piece tied to them in terms of title, but are still extremely good mentors. And I've worked with some of them that, you and I talked about this before, but the importance of some of the folks that came before us and leading the way for us has been so vital for so many of us. And without that, who knows where we'd be at, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, and I was going to say, back to the mentorship piece. Um, when the task is completed and the challenge is conquered, essentially, and there'll be more. It's never ending. I think one of the things is you have to recognize that. You have to recognize that challenge and watch them essentially overcome it. And then I think you follow that up with encouragement, like, "Hey, did you see that? What you did?" There's a lot of people who don't know how to do that, and it was tough, absolutely. But look at who you are now versus before this challenge. And also, one thing I like to do is, after they've been out in our main shop as technicians for a while, especially when it's been 6 months or a year, and they're daily taking on more difficult tasks and accomplishing those things, and doing a good job with it. I love to go back, and I love to ask them. And a lot of the listeners, they're probably going to say, "Yep, that's right, he does." Is say, "Hey, where were you a year ago?" And think about that. Like, you started out on maintenance and brake jobs, the kind of less skilled work per se. It's a part of what we do, right? But at the same time, in a year they've accomplished more diagnostic skills and things like that. They're doing more difficult jobs. And I love to point back and just like, look where you've grown, because I can see it from 30,000 feet. They think they haven't gotten anywhere, but I like to remind them of how much ground they've covered in that time, and look who they've become. Because I think that also helps sustain yourself along the way. Like, okay, this is not as bad, it's tough, but I'm making progress. So when you see progress, I think that helps you get some more motivation to continue on, because we all need that. you
Yeah.
know so we we
Yeah.
have we do have to dig in within ourselves to have that determination. But there's sometimes you need a breath of life from someone outside of you to help you along in this tough industry.
Boy, that's good. And the looking back over the year and seeing the progress that they've made, I think that could at times we'll maybe touch on that in an annual review, right? Like, hey, you've come a long way. But if you can truly get that technician to look back and see kind of everything that they've added to their repertoire over that year, I think some would be shocked if they truly took a look back. And you know it's not easy work, right? Like it can be very, very challenging. And at times I wish we'd almost lean into that a little bit more as an industry, because I just read something a couple of weeks ago where it talked about how true happiness comes at the end of doing something hard.
Hmm.
And I think that is so true. I think the older I get, the more true that becomes, because uh, doing those hard things and accomplishing something, and something like say like a voltage drop test or something like
Hmm.
that, where maybe it wasn't clicking at first and then all of a sudden it clicks. That took some effort to get through and learn how to do it. And to me, that's again one of those cool things that happens, but it doesn't happen without effort. It doesn't happen without maybe getting your butt kicked from time to time. Like, there are so many things that if you truly look at it as a craft and you get through those hard things, you become a much better technician as a result.
Absolutely. Agreed. You can't get there without the struggles. It just can't happen,
Yeah.
you know?
And I think at times, you know, this is where some of it just comes down to communication, right? And when I talk about that, one of the things that I said was very frustrating for me growing up in this industry was when you'd go ask a tech for help with something and they'd say, well, I had to learn the hard way. So guess what? You're going to learn the hard way. But if somehow we could just tweak that messaging a little bit to say, hey, listen, there are going to be challenges here, and maybe make this message a little bit more motivating in talking about that, right? Like I can tell you all day how to do it, but until you kind of work through it yourself and get through that mental barrier, you're probably not truly or fully going to understand it. And you're going to come back to me again and ask again the next time because you didn't go through those steps. So, you know, when I look back at my career, that's one of the things where maybe I took that as a slight back in the day of like, you know, I learned the hard way, so you have to learn the hard way now. But in reality, if we just cleaned up the messaging a little bit and how a technician communicates that to a younger technician, I think it would have a lot more impact and maybe a lot more understanding from that younger person.
Sure. No, agreed. Agreed.
Maybe I'm off base there, but I do like I'm guilty of saying that all the time. Right? Or like I'll call out some more experienced techs for saying that because I had frustrations with it when I was younger. But in looking back, hindsight's always 2020. You look at it and you say, yeah, you're probably going to have to go through some of that stuff, but that's no different than any other industry or any other thing, right? Like you're going to have to go through hard stuff if you want to be successful.
Absolutely. I think part of when you communicate that message, I think what helps is that like, hey, I could walk you through it, but I do like to tell people this, like, you got to go struggle with this. And I say, it's not because I don't like you. I love you, but this is to make you better. Because if I step in and fix it for you or figure it out for you, you're not going to grow. So like, yes, you're going to go get beat up, and that's okay. It's a part of the process. It's got to happen. But I got your back if something really goes south. I'm not going to give you that much rope. So I think that support a lot of times makes all the difference. And knowing it's like, I'm not saying this to be a jerk. I'm saying this to challenge you, and also let them know, like, hey, I got full confidence in your abilities to do it. Because sometimes you have to speak belief into people when they don't believe in themselves.
Mm,
It was done for me, on personal and professional levels. And I'm super grateful for that. Well, that's who you got to be for some other people.
boy, that is so true. And it's, I want to take that a step further. How do you balance that, the need for them to kind of figure it out on their own, along with the pressures of needing them to be productive as well, right? Because I think in a lot of cases in our industry, if somebody's not performing relatively quick, then it becomes an issue and they're moved on, or something happens there. Whereas like we had a technician on the show. He's been on several times now. Josh Arnold, one of my favorite guests, and I think he's been on the podcast 3 or 4 times now. But he had such a different viewpoint to flat rate when he was first starting off as a tech, and he said he loved it. The shop was open long hours, but his shift wasn't that long, right? So he said if say there was an engine job and the engine job took 8 hours, or that's what he was going to get paid for flat rate, he would routinely take 14, 15 hours on it, but he was staying after hours and he used it as the ability to learn. But then he just had a really unique viewpoint on it because he said, then I'm not punishing the dealership for me learning. And so he kind of reframed his thinking in that, hey, they're only getting paid for this 8 hours, or I'm getting paid 8 hours regardless. And I know I want to take my time and I want to learn this so that the next time I bring one in, that it's going to be faster and I'm going to be better at it. And I truly understand what the job entails. And for me, that was such a cool thing to hear was somebody that was thinking differently, that wasn't automatically going into kind of that negative mindset of, oh, they're trying to screw me out of time. He was a young tech and he was like, I just don't know enough about this stuff and I'm going to take my time on it because I know the dealership's only going to get paid for this much, but I'm also going to spend some time after hours diving into it. I'm going to do some things that are maybe a little unique, and kind of going back to the type of person you are with that growth mindset, that took that to a whole different level.
Hmm. Sure. Well, and along with Josh's comment, or his actions, basically the stuff he, how he tackled challenging things, I've done somewhat the same thing where, I remember some diagnostic stuff early on. So part of, let's see, I was in my mid 20s and I was a GM diagnostic tech. So, which for a guy that age, I think that's quite a bit of a challenge,
Yeah,
So
that's
doing drivability. So I was the number two drivability guy. So I remember taking the book home, just put it that way, because I'd be getting my butt kicked on some sort of diag. So I would take the book home because back then in the mid 2000s, that's what you had. You had the book. It wasn't you didn't have all the internet access. I mean, it was kind of there, but I wasn't there yet. So I took the book home and I would study that code. Why is it setting? Why is this happening? What do I need to test? And it would give me a perspective for the next day. So I hate to say it, but there is some of that at home study that has to take place. And honestly, to this day, I'm still doing some of that. Like part of my daily routine, I try to make it, and there's sometimes it doesn't always work out, but part of my daily routine is to study something related to my field, whether it's the business side of things or whether it's the technical. Like for instance, right now I'm studying some NVH stuff, noise, vibration, and harshness. And some of your listeners are probably familiar with the fact that picoscope technologies have made stuff for the scope to do NVH type stuff, where it's not as complicated as it was 10, 20 years ago to diagnose those things. So anyways, I'm reading up more on that stuff. Well, that's a part of my growth, and so I think that has to, if you're going to take this on as this is a passion of yours, and if you want to be great at it, that's some of the work that you got to do, is that off-site study, that at home 15 minutes a day or something, if you really want to keep progressing and growing in this industry, or any industry for that matter. That's a part of the
yeah.
process, you know
Yeah, Michael Jordan didn't just go to practice when he was supposed to be at practice, right? Or just play the games. Like he did a lot of stuff, as do most great athletes. I always love sports analogies. I think that's a good one.
Mhm.
And I think you're absolutely right. Whether it's a salesperson in the dealership or a parts person or an owner of a dealership, the ones that put in the extra work, I think really it's easy to see, right? Because they do set a standard and they do more than others do. And there is kind of that compound effect, that the fact that you've been doing that every day for so long, or as many times as you can, will set you apart from most, because most won't do that, right? And I think if you're
Right.
that technician that's out there listening to this right now, or service manager, fixed ops director, whoever you are that's listening, it is that growth mindset that's going to set you apart. That's the stuff that, you might dive into it. And who knows, I'm sure you've had it where you're diving into your studies on one thing and maybe it helps you connect the dots on something else as well, right? Like it's
Oh
just,
yeah.
the more you kind of like just, you have that discipline, you have that ability to really push yourself to a different standard, it pays off.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing is, I don't think if we want to, again, I know I'm a broken record and I keep on saying this, but navigating waters, if we want to navigate the waters of this industry in the continual yearly advancements in the technology that's coming off the assembly line, man, I don't know how you can't be working on, mastering your craft every day. I think it just has to be a part of you, for the rest of your career in order to navigate the waters, and also, especially if you're going to be a teacher or a trainer or a mentor, you continually have to learn the new stuff, and sharpening your skills. because you have to be able to pass that along to somebody.
Yeah. This week's episode of Beyond the Wrench is brought to us by Jasper Engines and Transmissions. Okay, your customer's engine or transmission has failed, but now is not the time for them to trade their vehicle. Not without a working engine or transmission. Besides, would they have kept their vehicle another 3 to 5 years if their engine or transmission had not let them down? If you answered yes, then Jasper Engines and Transmissions is your choice to give your customer's vehicle new life and many thousands of miles of enjoyable driving performance. When considering the high cost of a new or newer used vehicle, there's a pretty good case to be made for replacing a drivetrain component that has failed or is delivering poor performance. Rather than trading their car, truck, van, or SUV, install a quality remanufactured Jasper product for less than your customer would have to invest in a new vehicle or a newer used vehicle. Check out their website at jasperengines.com to learn more about the money-saving value of Jasper. How do you know when somebody how do you know if somebody's not meant to be a technician? And I'll put my hand up and say I was not meant to be a technician, right? I started my career off as a tech, and I often say that this industry has a wonderful way of putting you in the spot that you're supposed to be in. And mine was not working on cars because I stunk at it. And I think when I was going through it early in my career, that was really hard to get my hands wrapped around because that's all I ever wanted to do. Right. And so as I got more and more ingrained in the industry and started to see all the other opportunities that are out there, there are people that, you know what, maybe they're not good techs, but they would be a good parts person, or maybe a good advisor, or a good sales person even. I, have you had to have that conversation in the past, and maybe do you see any cues as to when it's maybe time to hang up the wrenches and go do something else?
Man, that's a great question and a tough one. The thing is, I think we've had pretty good success here as far as our development, from our quick service department on up, that we really haven't had to have that conversation
It's good.
that much at all, really. And, I mean, there was one, it was years ago. And I think the guy, or more or less, he had some quality issues. And I think that was one of the things that was just like,
Can't
if
do
you're
it.
not able to dial this in, then we can't move on from here, you know? So
That's
that
fair.
was, so there's a lot of different ways. So my experience with that is very little, because we've had pretty good success, you know? But I would imagine, and I'll shoot from the hip on this one. I would imagine it's got to be a combination of a couple things. Like there's a certain amount of productivity that someone has to have, even on the minor, less skilled tasks, maintenance and stuff like that. You have to be able to produce a certain amount, especially if you're going to hang in the maintenance section, which we don't necessarily want people to live there, because I don't want our shop to fall into the traditional, just like, the master techs take all the garbage and the young guys get all the great stuff. And not that, I mean, for a little bit, it does have to be that way to an extent, because I'm not going to throw an engine overhaul to a guy that, just came out of the quick service department. That wouldn't, I don't think that'd be a wise choice for that person to do that job. But I don't want to fall into that, you know, the skilled guys get all the garbage work, don't make the money, and the younger guys, they get all the gravy. I don't want our shop to fall into that. So the productivity side of it, the quality side of it, if we see consistent quality issues, even with, less skilled tasks, those would be two things. And then it's kind of tough to gauge this, but noticing someone's capacity to take on more difficult things, and those are some of the variables that you'd have to gauge. And there is no book for that. There is no
No.
Excel spreadsheet for that. It just, you get a feel for some of these things. You know what I'm saying? So productivity, capacity, and quality, those are three of the things. And that's just shooting from the hip of things that I would use to gauge someone. Hey, you've been doing this for 15 years, but I can't get you to, I can't get you to do HVAC or something, So
Yeah.
not that I would let it get that far, but those are some of the things you'd have to consider, because essentially I think the culture you want to drive in your shop as far as skills you want everybody to shoot to be the best that they can be, you know, that it's not going to be this big gap of I have 2 master techs and I have 15, guys that can only do brakes.
Yeah.
You essentially, and I think the industry is not demanding it, but it's like, I think with what's coming out in the tasks that we're asking everybody to do, man, like I say, like we need a band of Navy SEALs. I need a whole shop full of them, not just one or two. And that's kind of the culture you want to drive, is like, dude, we keep growing and we keep going. And that's the way it has to be.
That's more fun to be a part of something like that, right? Where you are constantly growing, you are constantly becoming a better shop. And I just, I hope those of you techs that are in shops like that embrace that, because that is not everywhere. And when you get into a place like that, it's just so much more rewarding. Now, you talked about kind of having those senses as to when somebody's ready for more work or more challenging work. How does your dispatch process work in that regard? Are you having to tell somebody, hey, this person's ready for this kind of next step, or how does that communication look?
So, we do, our shop setup is a central dispatch type dispatching system. And basically what we do, and I have in the past year or so, there have been times where I have been the dispatcher handing out work. But we have a dispatcher now, and he also doubles as kind of a parts guy, which is, it
Sure.
does have his advantages, because he's tied into the parts side of things. So I think that helps out being out in the shop. Um, so I think dispatch wise, sometimes what I'll like to tell him is like, hey, here's some of the things we're working on in class. And I'll give you, for instance, like right now, we have 2 classes going. One's an electrical class, and one is a HVAC class. Well, right now in Michigan, it's HVAC season. I mean, it's 80 some degrees today. And so a lot of people over the last couple of weeks have been finding out that, hey, it's blowing warm or not blowing cool enough. Well, let's take it in and get it looked at. Well, knowing that we've been preparing people in class for this, I'm looking for dispatch opportunities, and I'll tell them like, hey, we're doing HVAC class. Give such and such and such and such. If you see some HVAC diags, let's go to them. So that's how we can also we can grow them and get customer work done at the same time, and give
Absolutely.
them the challenges that are kind of where they're at and what they're studying, so they can absorb more and learn more, like right now. They can do that on the job, you know. So we definitely utilize dispatching as a teaching tool, and that's been a game changer for us. So over the last, I'm going to say 2 to 3 years, because we've gone around to a couple of, to a different dispatching style, but migrated back to the central dispatching. As soon as I was able to dispatch work, that helped me. That was a huge game changer as far as helping develop techs, because I knew where they were at skill wise, and I could see the stuff coming across the desk of what needed to be looked at. Check engine lights, diags, or HVAC or electrical stuff that I might be able to diag just by looking at the repair order. Oh, it's probably this. And knowing where that technician's at, in their journey, I can hand that stuff off to them. So we get customer work done. It gives me an opportunity for a teaching tool, and then they can complete that task and they can grow and make a living for themselves. So it's like we cover so many things all at the same time by like having that kind of focused dispatching.
What a great answer. And that peek behind the curtain, I think, is amazing, because having as a dispatcher the familiarity with the skill levels of the techs, it really does help you kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together. And I don't know that that dispatching piece gets enough credit for what it truly does in a dealership, because it is hard to understand who can do what and at what skill level or what speed. And over time, you kind of get more comfortable with that. But to have the boots on the ground presence that you did and really have a true understanding of where everybody's skill set is at and who could develop something by doing this type of job, again, kudos to you, because I think that's something that I think a lot of shops could learn from.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said earlier, it's been a game changer and helped accelerate these guys' growth.
Yeah. One thing you had mentioned in the intro call that I found pretty neat was that you talked about the importance of communicating without yelling. And, I think those of us that have been around the industry for a long time have probably been in shops where there is a lot of yelling. And uh, how does that part of your leadership style, has it evolved, or have you always kind of been that way? Talk to me about that piece, because I do think this is another area where a lot of people could learn from.
Well, I'll try and answer that the best I can. Um, Essentially, you're going to be faced with frustrating situations. Someone didn't do something they were supposed to, or certain people didn't do it the way they were supposed to. Um, and maybe a technician got out of line, or technicians got out of line or something. And obviously that might drive you to be upset, you know. And what I've learned, and honestly, this is our service director, who I think he's taught me a ton about this. So I gotta give him some kudos for that, and I'm very grateful for what he's impressed on me. I have seen him angry before, but he is communicated. I don't think I've seen him yell, and I've worked with him for probably 7-8 years, and I've seen him upset, and a lot of times rightfully so, and he's had discussions about, with the individual or individuals, rather than yelling at them. Does that make sense? So I
Yeah.
guess he's impressed this on me, and that's helped out quite a bit, because I'm trying to think back. I'm trying to think in the shop. I don't think I've yelled at somebody. Now we we do joke around a little bit in the shop and yell at each other. There's
Yeah. Oh,
if
yeah.
we've yelled at each other, it's kind of a little bit of, kind horseplay, joking around. We have done stuff like that. So that's the only yelling that essentially has taken place. Um, but when I've had some difficult conversations with people where, let's say, my emotions were a little bit, where I was upset, he's taught me basically keep some sort of diplomacy. And honestly, and there's another guy years ago, Snap-on guy, and of all people, this guy, he had every right to mess someone's day up, because he was very trained in martial arts, so he had every right to yell at somebody and get away with it. You know what I'm saying? But he had impressed on me. He said, "You always approach someone as a gentleman," and I'll never forget that. And that has kept me out of so much unnecessary trouble in conversations and confrontation. It's just that one thing: always approach someone as a gentleman. And I think that has gotten more done, as far as like helping us move beyond whatever the technician did wrong. Hey, they've been showing up late consistently. Well, approach them as a gentleman, with this confrontational thing, or productivity, or what have you. I mean, put anything there. You got to approach someone as a gentleman, and that has been a game changer. So I don't essentially need to yell. If it got to the point where I needed to yell, and it wasn't like, hey, the car's coming off the hoist, then I probably failed a couple of steps before. You shouldn't have to. So I'm not saying that it's not merited. I'm sure that there's some times that are, but I'm just saying
Yeah.
that I haven't necessarily had to do it. Not that I can remember.
I think that's the sign of a strong leader. I really do. Somebody that doesn't have to yell to get their point across, can clearly communicate and set expectations. You use that example of somebody showing up late. I think every shop across the United States probably has that issue currently, or has had that issue in the past with one or two individuals at least, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that can be one where it's a reason to be frustrated. It's a reason for a leader to uh, almost feel like they're being disrespected, right? And I think that can be hurtful to the ego, and I think that sometimes can get people to trigger their emotions in a negative way. And I do think that is some of the detriment of our industry, right? Is if we have leaders that immediately jump to that emotional response, that you're maybe not getting the message across the way that you want to, or maybe it's not as effective as you want it to be, or if it is effective, it's maybe only effective for a little bit and then it doesn't change. And so I really enjoy hearing about instances in leadership where people take, in my opinion, the right approach and still get stuff done. Right. I think the key point there being you can get stuff done without yelling. You just have to be able to communicate.
Absolutely. And I'll be honest with you, that is an area of growth for me, because I have a deficiency in that area. I'm just this is me, warts and all, right? But I'm learning and growing, and I have other people around me to learn and grow from. So that's one thing I'm thankful for is, like I said, our fixed ops director, Keith, he's impressed a lot of stuff on me. And there's sometimes I'll bounce stuff off of him. And sometimes it just comes down to word track. I don't know what the words to use. And he helps me out with that. So it's like having the vocabulary to communicate is also critical too, you know? So, so yeah, that's definitely it's the communication thing it's an art,
Yeah.
it's an
It,
art that I think we have to get better in, because I think you'll accomplish more of the things you're looking to accomplish.
as we get close to the end of this podcast, I did want to talk about how much I enjoyed the intro call with you in your viewpoint on people and not just as employees or coworkers or whatever, teammate, however you want to coin that. You had a unique perspective on how business and personal relationships interact, and I really enjoyed that. Maybe you didn't compartmentalize the two as much as a lot of people do, if that makes sense. You did kind of just recognize that there's a lot at play between the two, between your personal relationships and your business relationships, and how the two kind of mend, and a lot of your business relationships do become deeply meaningful and deeply personal. Have you always been that way, or where you're able to kind of just, you're looking at the people you're working with in the same light as just your general friendships?
Yeah, I mean, we spend a lot of time together, right? Sometimes we spend 8, 10, 12 hours a day together, interacting with each other. And you can't help but look at people, they're, I mean, essentially they're acquaintances and friends to a certain extent. You may not hang out and have barbecues and things like that, but at the same time you still share some of the personal side of life, and I know in our call we had talked about, or in our previous call we talked about, just kind of that investment that you have in other people's lives just because you're with them so long. And it kind of blends into, that mentorship thing, like we talked about earlier, in the podcast. The mentorship side it also has a personal side to it. You spend all this time with a lot of younger individuals, and in some ways, sometimes you end up providing some guidance and perspective in life, you know, and we all need it. I remember being a young guy, and I still need guidance and perspective in life, and it probably will all the way to the end.
Same.
But I had gotten that from some mentors, sometimes when you had to put the tools down and talk. I remember some of those guys were there for me to help navigate some of the personal side of life, you know. And I see that a lot out in our society, that people are lacking that guidance, and lacking some of that investment. So to me, that goes hand in hand with the mentorship. Like, absolutely love to teach people how to work on cars, but also you have to be someone that's willing to help coach in life as well. And I think that just ends up happening, and that's okay, because it's needed. There's so many people who need that out there. There's people, we all need, we need marital advice, we need financial advice, it's like but you have to be that person, I think, when it comes to mentorship. And that's a part of the rewarding part of it, um to help someone in their marriage, or help someone in their relationship, or help someone, with some financial knowledge, or have it how to navigate a friendship situation, or who to be around, who to not be around. Even some of those things that we get, we're supposed to be essentially taught as kids. Well, we need to figure that out as adults, and sometimes people need some help. Hey, hanging out with these people is not going to help you with your future goals, professionally or personally. So I think you kind of have to be that person for people, and I think about individuals over time. I remember one in particular. I think I remember a conversation we had, or a talk we had. It was, he probably would have left the industry years ago, if we wouldn't have had that conversation. And he'd gone on to be a fantastic elite master tech, and just he's a fantastic technician. Well, that could have ended a long time ago if him and I hadn't had that conversation, where he needed someone to breathe some life into him. I mean, he was down in a personal side, down in his personal life. I think he needed someone, again, to breathe some life into him. So, and I think that's where the personal side of the mentorship comes into play, and it has to.
You're so right. And you having the sense of when to interject in something like that, that's not always the easiest thing in the world. And I think at times we don't want to overstep into somebody's personal life if they are, not wanting us there. Right. But at the same time, I can see you've got the heart to want to help these people out and want to see them end up in a better position, both personally, professionally. And I think that's where it's so refreshing. It's so cool to hear that part about you. And you can tell, I think it's just, I get why somebody went out of their way to recommend that you come on the show. It's been such a fun time to do this. I know before we hop off, we did want to give some shout outs to some people, right? I wanted to make sure I gave you some time to maybe give a few shout outs if you want to.
Yeah, and I'll try and make it quick. I mean, ultimately, at the beginning, I have to, give thanks and glory to God, because it all starts out with Him, and that's where this all originates from. And if you would have saw the way that I started out, you'd like, yeah, he needs God's help. That's how far I've come up, right? So, but definitely got to say thanks, at least professionally. Well, personally, I'm going to say first to my wife Holly and my kids, Keegan, Dawson, Kaylee, and Bryson, just being patient with me along this journey. They're my family, and been with me through this whole thing. And professionally, I got to say, it started out with Jim Carroll and Jeff Davidson. Those are two mentors and coaches in my life. Professionally, who helped get me along and kind of coach me through this thing and got me going. And then some people that, currently, like all the technical reps and teachers down at the Toyota Cincinnati Training Center. You guys know who you are. You guys have, you've been close by, and you've been people to look up to for a long time. So definitely appreciate you guys. So yeah, definitely want to say thanks to everybody and their continual investment and past investment.
Yeah. And the last one I would say is, thank you to Metro too, right? Because I asked beforehand, as I do with a lot of our guests, did you get the all clear from ownership or from your supervisors? And what you had to say was just very flattering on their end, and that not only was it okay, they were pretty pumped to see that you were able to do it. So I wanted to make sure we gave them a shout out too, because I thought that was really, really neat of them to do that.
Yeah. And really a lot of stuff that we do here on a day-to-day basis, or, with training and development, they've supported for all these years. So I got to give them a lot of credit. And, it's really helped us develop the culture, and the people that we have today.
Oh, how cool. Well, I hope to have you back on again. I feel like we are just scratching the surface on a lot of the topics that we talked about, and genuinely appreciate you taking time out of your day to do the podcast. Again, thank you to Javier for writing me the email and getting this thing kicked off. What an enjoyable experience with all of you, and just truly appreciate you coming on.
Cool. Thanks for having us on, Jay.
That wraps up another episode of Beyond the Wrench. If you liked this episode, please show your support by rating and following the podcast. You can also watch the video interviews on WrenchWay's YouTube channel. Speaking of WrenchWay, did you know Beyond the Wrench is managed and produced by the WrenchWay team? WrenchWay is an online community dedicated to promoting and improving automotive and diesel careers. We help technicians find the best shops to work at, and we also help auto, diesel, and CTE instructors get more support from local industry. You can learn more by visiting wrenchway.com.